clicked. Hello. Nice to see you, Magento, Florida. We are the Magentomen. These are the top 10 maintenance and development modules to advance your Magento 2 store.
Yes, this is Steve T, and I'm Steve B. We're the co-hosts or hosts of the Magentomen podcast, that's one of the key reasons for us being here. We've been a part of the Magento community for a while now. I'd just like to invite you to check out our podcast where we share our opinions, cool stories, and just our experience within Magento. Just want to point out at some point we're going to do a giveaway of an external hard drive if you like and subscribe to our podcast. And again, happy to be here presenting in front of you. As Steve T pointed out, we are going to be talking about 10 extensions or tools that we believe can enhance your development process or just enhance your Magento 2 store in general. And with that, Steve T will speak on his picks.
Yep. So first, we'll just do a quick overview here. We're going to talk about how to pick modules, right? If that's the set of tools, you're using modules. I'll have my picks, Steve will have his, and then we'll talk about tooling. Okay, he's got to adjust his mic. I'll keep going. So, how do we choose modules? Probably best to consider larger module providers, like a Headworks or Amnesty. They have generally high coding standards. They keep their modules up to date with the latest version of Magento, and especially with the switch over lately of 2.4.4 to 0.5. It's PHP getting upgraded, so if you're using a smaller module provider, they might be lagging behind and not have updated their module yet, and you will get to do that. So while you're picking a module, just keep that in mind. If a larger provider has what you need, probably best to use that one. If not, though, just make sure it gets regular updates, right? Also, play with the front end and the back end demos. Hopefully there is a demo. Does it work perfectly? Does it fit every need you have? Great. If not, now you're kind of doing requirements gathering, right? So we're going to install this module, and we need to do this and that and these other things. And then, obviously, an important new thing is it supporting Hiva if you're using that? So first, we'll go through my picks, and here we go. So this first one is a really cool one that we've installed recently at the merchant that I work at, which is Store View Tooltips. So usually to see the values of the different attributes or fields that you have, you're going to go to the top and you're going to select which store view, and then you'll see the value. So it takes a second to reload the page. This one, it just gives you a little tooltip, and every time you look at it, as you can see in my GIF here, you'll get all the values from the different store views, so you kind of know without switching around a lot. Pretty useful one. Dependency checker. This one I like a lot. So I think it will be very useful if you could integrate it into your build process. But you could also just manually run it. It's going to do a lot of things. It's kind of too small for me to read here, but basically it's checking your module structure. Did you set it up right? Is it added with Composer correctly? And then it's going to give you some errors. If not, again, probably something really cool to add into your build process if you have one, or you can do it manually. The URL integrity checker. Now, this one is kind of really important, and it's so we all kind of know Magento creates a lot of URLs that aren't necessarily the URL that you show to your customer. Now, usually, as long as you don't link to those URLs, you're pretty good as far as SEO. But if they do get linked to, or, I guess Google just guesses some of these URLs, you could end up with a lot of duplication. Obviously, you can use canonical tags to mitigate that. But this module is going to actually go through the Magento side, right? And it runs on a cron, and it will alert you if you're doing something or if there's a big backlog of conflicting issues as far as Magento is concerned with your URLs. Very useful module. A lot of, what I like about it, I guess, the most is that it doesn't try to fix any of the problems, right? That's up to you. It's just going to show you, like, hey, as far as the tool can tell, these problems may exist. So a very valuable one to have. This next one actually dovetails a little bit with the previous talk. So a lot of times, configurable products out of the box Magento 2 won't exactly do everything what people would expect a configurable product when you're changing the options, or you kind of would want like the title and the description to update. So there's a lot going on in this module, and sure, we could write a very simple module to change the title, hook into the swatches, right, and just maybe write a little mix-in that's going to change the title when they change the swatches. But then, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it all kind of compounds, and you end up writing a pretty complex module. Whereas the improved configurable products module, the one I use a lot and like, is Firebear. It does a lot of that out of the box. And as you can see, that URL, when it's updating, like you change the product, the URL updates, that's not a hash, right? So it's going to load the actual product data for that, and then obviously you could relink to it. So it's not like the page loads and then it's going to click on the options for you. This one is, well, I mean, it does do like a history push while you're doing it, but if you took that URL and shared it, that's just a URL without a hash. So it's, from the backend side, presenting you with the correct product, which I believe would send Google the right data. I would have to double check on that one, but it dovetails in a lot of ways. My next one is one-step checkout. This one is from Headworks, and I like it a lot. The interesting thing is Magento 2 default checkout is called one-page checkout, right, in the code. Now, that's kind of a thing of like single-page website, right, where we as developers say, yeah, that's a single-page website, but really most people see it as a whole website with a bunch of different pages. This obviously is because our default Magento checkout, the single page, is actually 2 steps. I've heard that, presenting it all in this way could overwhelm people. Too much stuff all going on at once, and, the customer sees that and they just nope out of there. Now, I've heard more often, though, that doing it this way increases conversion rates. And you can see, especially the thing I like about this one that I don't see in other modules as nice, it's sort of there, is the data. So you can see on each step, like, where did they fall out? And especially here, the example is shipping. We're seeing, hey, a lot of people are falling out on the shipping step. Maybe we need to think about adjusting our rates or something. It gives you that data of where are people falling out of checkout. Oh, and I have more here to read and think about. Oh, yeah, I mean, that's a nice one too. It does let you, once you've installed this and configured it, you can move fields around from the admin or remove them. You can't add fields, but you can turn them off, move them around, which is a really nice thing that a lot of people might want to do, especially if they're, kind of on the more content admin side, and maybe they're a marketing person that you've trained to use the site, and you say, here's checkout, go wild. They can move things around and do their thing. So with that, those are my picks. I'm going to send it over to Steve B.
Awesome. Sorry about the hair brushing up against the mic. I should have tied my hair back, but nonetheless, we'll continue. Steve T kind of focused on some tools that would be very helpful from a business perspective or from an admin perspective. Being a back-end developer and just always looking for ways to optimize development, whether that be debugging or creating new features, etc. Naturally, my picks kind of are in that area. So I'm not sure how many people know about this tool, but this was something that I discovered while actually trying to dump a clean version of a database. A big issue or a common use case or common task we have as backend developers is to export or get a fresh copy of a database so that we can use it in a staging environment or locally. The problem is we run into the issue where we have customer data, order data, other sensitive data that we probably shouldn't be mishandling locally. So at some point, looking into how to solve that problem so I don't have to manually drop tables and figure out the queries to figure out which tables need to be dropped for us to be, I guess, security compliant. I ran into this tool. It's the N98 Mage Run tool. It works both for Magento 1 and Magento 2. It's easily installable using Composer, or you can manually download the package. Again, it's a CLI tool that allows you to do very common tasks that would be a little bit, that would usually be a bit tedious, whether it's generating an env.php file, getting a copy of the database that doesn't have sensitive information in it, creating a customer, which Magento doesn't allow you to do, as far as I know, in the default Magento CLI commands, you're not able to create a customer. This tool allows you to do that. You can manage customer accounts, delete customer accounts, all from the CLI. And again, the biggest use that I get from this tool is managing the database. Managing databases, you can import, export databases, and you can also easily run queries right from the command line. So again, if you're not using this tool, I highly recommend it. It can save you a lot of time, especially if you're a back-end developer. Go ahead.
It cleans customer data out too, right?
Yeah, so there is the db dump command allows you to pass a set of arguments, and you can kind of determine which subset of data you would like to be removed from the dump. So you can, I think that there's a argument, there's the development argument, there's the Klarna argument, there's a series of arguments you can pass that basically modify the dump command so that certain tables are excluded.
Yeah, and that's really cool about creating customers. I mean, you can create an admin on the command line, but
you can't create a customer, correct?
Awesome.
So the next one is the developer toolbar. If you're a back-end developer, you probably use Xdebug. If you're not using Xdebug, you probably should. It'll save you a whole bunch of time. But even with Xdebug, you still have to walk through. You have to step through the code, and that can be very difficult, and it's just super time consuming. This tool actually enhances your development workflow because it allows you to see which classes, which observers, which controllers are being triggered in real time as you debug a specific workflow. And if you couple that with a tool like Xdebug, you can maybe cut your development time in half because you're not having to step through each piece of code or each function that's being called, while figuring out whatever this bug is. Again, and the other cool thing is it allows you to view data within the core config data table. If you're a backend developer, you know that that's a table that you commonly have to check, whether it's to update base URLs, update payment information details if you want to switch between a sandbox account or a production account. So very, very useful extension, especially for debugging. and couple that, if you couple that with a tool like Xdebug, obviously I haven't ran the actual numbers, but I would say this, in my professional estimation, I would think it cuts down the time at least 50%, just by showing you all of the calls being made while going through a specific or testing a particular feature. It shows you all of that up front without you having to go and look for it. And with that, we can move to the next one. Recently, I worked on an issue with ShipStation. I'm sure a lot of you use ShipStation just because it makes the shipment process so much easier in Magento. I know a lot of merchants use it. And the reason I found this tool was because ShipStation actually makes calls to Magento when you may assume, if you've never looked into ShipStation, you might assume that Magento is making calls to the ShipStation API, but in most cases, ShipStation is the one actually making the calls to Magento. The other thing is ShipStation doesn't make the calls to Magento on a regular basis. They're using some custom algorithm depending on how frequently you ship products or how frequently you sell products. ShipStation comes up with its own timeline or frequency for how often it imports or calls the Magento APIs in order to sync shipments into their dashboard. Again, the reason this came up was because I was looking through the logs, which backend developers are commonly doing to debug things, and the API logs were kind of mixed up with other logs, and it just made it extremely difficult to figure out what I was looking at. So I found this tool here that basically segregates API calls into a separate log file in a separate folder, and it makes reviewing API calls a lot easier, and yeah, just saves time on the debugging end. So with that, we can move to the next slide.
I just want to point out that last one, that also shows you like query stats, right?
Correct.
Yeah, which is super useful.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is not a specific extension, but maybe a particular type of extension that I recently discovered that has been extremely useful. A major issue I have when it comes to debugging cron jobs is if a site is fairly complex and you have a whole bunch of processes running automatically, then your list of cron jobs just get really huge and it's difficult to debug, right? And then you'll have cron tabs, crons from all sorts of different extensions. You have to look into the cron table to see, which crons executed successfully, etc. Like if there were any, what time they ran, etc. So this tool basically allows you to visualize cron jobs, update the scheduling of crons, the frequency, etc., which makes the process of debugging and managing crons so much easier. If you're a backend developer, you know how much of a nightmare this can be. As far as having to look up a particular job code within a particular extension, going in, figuring out what query you want to run, and then modifying that query as needed, and not seeing that information update in real time. It just slows down the process. So I've seen an implementation of this from Amasti, one from Mage Plaza, and then there's also a free extension inside of GitHub, which is what I've been using, and members of my team have been using, to help this problem. So with that, we move to the next slide, which is the slide on page speed. And Steve T actually made these recommendations, so I'm going to pass the baton to him again.
Yes, I'm going to take back over for a minute here. So these ones, for me, like they fall into tooling or whatever, but a big one is if you have a Cloudflare setup or a CDN of some kind, you can fully cache Magento pages, not the cart or checkout or account section, but everything else on the edge, right? So, you're at here, right? You make a request for cbdMD.com. Instead of going to our server, it just goes to the closest Cloudflare location, right? And gets the page and sends it to you. So the issue you might run into with this is that, well, it's great, but if somebody logged into their account, right, then they would see somebody else's information, the first person who hit the cache, right? Which is very bad. Now, you can see this string I put at the bottom, and it's not super clear, but that last option there, that is just, how to exclude from the rule. And all we're saying is, if they have a PHP session ID, use that chunk right there and do your testing on a staging environment, but this will exclude logged in users from the full page caching. The beautiful part too is, by default, Magento 2 is fully hole punched, right? Back on Magento 1, we would have to punch some holes, which just basically means, this part of the page, I'm going to use Ajax to call back and forth. So out of the box, this should work totally fine with most Magento stores, and it should be pretty snappy. I mean, if you're not serving the page, Cloudflare is pretty quick to send these pages out. So a very nice thing. Also, I will say mod page speed. It's available for Apache and Nginx. It does pretty much everything. I mean, it does image optimization. It can do minification. It can move your JavaScript to the bottom. I mean, it has pretty much every option you might want to do with page speed. Kind of out of the box, you get to decide which ones I want mod page speed to take care of and which ones I don't. But just something interesting, if you're trying to optimize for page speed, it's kind of a buckshot, and it might be cutting down quite a bit of stuff for you to do manually. We'll go to the next slide here. Ah, yes, my tooling slide. So, this first one here is called Gulp less, right? So Bob Motor wrote a replacement for grunt less compilation. So front-end developers, we're compiling the less ourselves in our local environment. Magento does that by a part of like the build process setup upgrade is gonna build your CSS for you. But we as front-end developers don't want to do that every time we make a change, right? So we use grunt. We use grunt watch, and it compiles the CSS as we change it. Maybe we have live reload, so we don't even have to hit refresh. It just updates as we're working in the CSS. The nice thing about Bob Motor's Gulp replacement is that it's instant, right? Grunt takes like 2 or 3 seconds, even if you just change a color. I mean, it won't matter what you change, but it takes a few seconds, and then it reloads. The Gulp version here goes right away. It just is very instant. I highly recommend if you're a front-end developer, check it out. It's not exactly the same commands and watch and all that, but it's very, very similar. Also very easy to install, or simple. This second one is called Fontello. So this one is a place you can make your own custom icon fonts. Pretty cool thing because, as a front-end developer, is that my time limit? Okay, as a front-end developer, I'll get, from the client, let's say even if we're using Font Awesome, we're going to use Font Awesome, the designer might want a couple of custom icons around, right? So now, I guess, I can make a separate font, or I can use SVGs for those, or whatever. I mean, ideally, it would be nice if we use SVGs for all of our icons, right? They're much clearer, but if you're just building a site, you want it out there quick, the quicker way is to use a font icon. Now, the beauty of Fontello is it's got a bunch of the default ones. You just choose what you want, and you can upload your own. So I'll choose what I want from Font Awesome, and then I can upload my own icons, and then I export it. So I get a font and a configuration file. The configuration file, I just stick it in the theme somewhere. It doesn't do anything. It's just, this is what you made your font out of. The font, obviously, you load it and use it like a normal font. So now you have all your custom stuff, all the stuff from all these libraries. And then let's say 2 months later, they come along and say, oh, I want to add this other icon. You come back here, you re-import your config file that you stuck in your theme in the repo, right? Now you're ready. Just add your new one, re-export it, update the font, update the config file, and you're ready to rock. Nice, useful tool there. And thank you so much for coming to our talk.
Thanks again.
Don't forget to subscribe.
We're the Magentlemen. Check us out on YouTube.
Yes.
Like,
we love
subscribe.
And appreciate you.
And once again, we have a giveaway. You get an external hard drive.
In the next month or so, yeah. Subscribers, we're going to do a giveaway.
Whenever Steve decides to give
yes, exactly.
So thanks again.
Of course, yes.
Thank you, Steve. And we have a couple of minutes for questions. So.
Yep.
Just one thing. It seems to be having a shortage. All right. So one thing I wanted to bring up with the N98 Mage Run, there are some caveats with that tool. For instance, if you're an Adobe Commerce Cloud customer, you cannot really run that tool on those containers because they're in production mode.
Yep.
So a lot of the commands are going to be disabled. Now, one feature I have found useful with it, though, is testing cron jobs. Because you can execute an individual cron job, which means that I can hook Xdebug into it and step through. I had to do that recently for an extension that had a really not well-designed cron job that I had to fix. And that was very useful to hook into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very useful for that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
For the toolbar, what's the installation like for that? Is there like a module that you install or like a little browser extension?
So it is an extension. Just install it using Composer like a regular extension. And then and it's visible in the browser. The cool thing is you can restrict it by IP. So let's say you wanted to install it on a staging environment, but you didn't want, I don't know, marketing to see all of that debugging data, then you could just restrict the toolbar by IP. But installation is fairly straightforward, like any other extension.
So we have time for one more. If you have anyone? No? That's it? Okay, then. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.